the time today, by the way. So really quick, some of this is repeat for Novi and perhaps even for Justin, but who is Varasset? So we have been joint use software industry leaders for over 20 years now. We're very active in the national joint use industry, participate in boards on a number of organizations. We have configurable software that's implemented in power and communications companies. We're built to interface, and we specialize in the integrations. There are some, there's more expense with integrations, and so we always try to focus those and make sure every one that we do counts, but we can do it well when they need to be done. We're very secure, and I'll touch on security as we go. We happen to be the development vendor for engines. And the services we offer are just to implement our software. We don't do any of the field work. Some of the other things that are out there are often looking for any software they utilize as a tool to really do your field work, and that's not how we operate. We are just a software developer and feel we've developed the best joint use software out there. We're a Microsoft partner, we're an Esri partner, and we're SOC 2 certified, which I'll touch on. You're familiar with our some of our other customers, and so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that today. So as far as our understanding of you folks, we understand you want to automate and streamline your joint use processes to gain efficiency. And I should say too that we are really thinking that for you folks, it's Varasset 6 is what makes the most sense. We've done a little work evaluating costs on both platforms, and we really think that Varasset 6 is going to be the best tool for you. And we could phase things in as we go, but your biggest frustration currently is your lack of ability to know the status of any given project. That's something we certainly can solve. We understand you, like everyone else, are getting increasing attachment requests of all flavors. An interface with Esri and engines is going to tie things together for you. We do understand you've got your Esri GIS, ARC, FM, and collector. You've got the portal up and running and have created your own web maps, and that's actually a real benefit for you. As we're completing our Dominion process, there's a couple things they saw in Georgia Power's instance that they thought, oh, they'd like that too. Well, it turns out that Georgia Power's GIS team built that themselves, and so you guys are ahead of the game even that way. So it'll be very easy for us to connect to. And we understand your next step is to put a business case together and then present to the council. And if you need any help, our team's been doing, not only we doing joint use software for 20 years, but our senior ownership team have been doing software consulting for over 35 years and can really help with those kinds of things. If you would like that help, we'd be happy to do so. Anything else that I perhaps have missed?
I think you hit it all.
All right, fair enough. Varasset supports all joint use functions, and I'm not going to belabor this a whole lot other than to say we can tie everything together, but anything you want to do in joint use, you can do through Varasset. And then our tool, we integrate with Esri, and the financial information for billing would be passed back and forth. We have a couple of options for your attachers to request their permits. And for you folks, the thing that's going to work best is the engines integration. Communication Manager is a tool we developed for very large organizations or people in states where they didn't have engines. And we believe that engines interface is going to be the most cost-effective tool for you folks to get up and running, and so that's the current plan. The idea is to tie it all together. So you've got a bunch of disconnected things at this point, and you want the system to work for you instead of you working for the system. And a lot of these dotted lines there are human interfaces, lots of time trying to find data from other different systems and then trying to pitch everything together. And then, so what we're going to do is tie all those things together for you with Varasset, engines, and Esri to give you an integrated and streamlined system. In terms of the engines integration, we know you're familiar with engines, but the idea is to automate work and reduce manual effort. There's step completion, so these steps as they go will be completed and there'll be notifications sent. I won't read all those points there, but you can synchronize all your assets and dramatically improve the accuracy of your third-party communications. Austin's going to touch on this, and he may even bring up a similar slide as he goes. But this is just kind of a visual on how we would operate with your PA tickets and your attachment data sync. Again, here's just a data model showing how this would operate, and we'll show you that a little bit more as we go in the demo. And unless there's any questions, I will turn this over to Austin. Does anybody have any questions before we do that? All right, Austin, it's yours.
Thanks, Dave.
Yep.
My notes here. So like Dave said, my name's Austin, and I help out with most of our joint use implementations. So yeah, thanks for having me here, and I'll do my best to walk you through our solution, and then like Dave said, a potential integration with engines. And obviously, if there are questions, please feel free to raise your hand, and we can talk through them. So yeah, I'm just going to kind of do a brief overview of just like the general benefits and features of Varasset, and then we'll kind of jump right into like the data model and how it supports joint use. So first, Varasset is a modern, operates in any modern web browser. So Chrome, Edge, whatever, you can, access it from those browsers. In terms of data management, it has kind of the main way you manage your data is in a tabular environment. So you're not just restricted to having like one record open at a time. You can have many open, pretty much as many as you'd like, and then you can toggle between those views in addition to whatever dashboard view you might have open. We do have built-in authentication. So as part of the implementation, it is an option set up integration to your Active Directory so that you don't have to manage a separate login. You could just use your your CLECO network ID and log into Varasset with that. In addition to Active Directory integration, we also have role and row level security. So typically the way we would set it up for most of our customers is that you would use your Active Directory to log into the system, but then as part of the implementation, we would set up specific roles and user accounts to manage your user base. And more specifically, we have the ability all from the front end to configure down to the very field level what your users can see, edit or not edit, delete. You have that ability. So one of the maybe basic examples is maybe you do have say a joint use admin who works under you that they need to see like a cost estimate for some make ready or something. You want them to see that data, but you don't necessarily want them to have the ability to edit it. You have the ability to configure that from the front end down to the role and row level field. So it's pretty extensive, and it's beyond just down to the field level too. There's more that you can do there. In terms of process management, Varasset has what we call state machine. So I won't spend too much time talking about this, but you have the ability to define different status values per a specific entity. And then in addition to that, you have the ability to define the transition rules between those entities or between those statuses. So for example, maybe you guys have, and I can kind of walk through this when we get to the end, but maybe for example, you have like you want to set up an internal, invoicing approval process. So before you send your attachment data over to your financial system for processing, you could actually set up using statuses and different transition rules per the role, different rules and process flows that need to occur before you send that data or approve that to be invoiced. A very common one would be generate some sort of report, and then the third parties have to review data, the counts and rates and totals of that annual, fees for their lease agreements. You could set up like a workflow there, and you can do all that from the front end and using the state machine here. So, and in addition to that, this is not tied down to just one state transition rules per entity. You can have as many statuses per entity throughout the system. You can, you're not just defining one, you can have different ones. In terms of data management, there's kind of two main ways that you can manage your data. So one of them, you just would have like a specific record, right? So one, asset record or communication record, but then each major entity or each major module will have its own data grid. So I'm looking at the communication here, and you can see that the different columns that you see here it's almost represented similar to like an Excel spreadsheet. So you can actually sort on these. So you can click the columns, you can drag and drop the columns. You can even group based on a specific value. So maybe, give me all of my communications and group them by the status. It will also remember this presentation at a per user level. So obviously, the data that Novi want to see might be different from what like Cindy or whoever would want to see. So it will remember that you have your certain settings set up that way. Most of the major screens will have data exports. So for easy, just, you can filter to specific records and then export them out into an Excel. You can create and configure different reports and then tie them to specific screens so that they ran, allow users to run them from those screens. You can set up different presentations and then toggle between those presentations per the user or per your organization. And then kind of the more powerful tool would be the filtering capabilities. So all the attributes for a specific entity will be filterable based on that screen. So basically what you're looking at here, all the different attributes and related attributes to this entity that I can then apply to the screen and then filter on. And you can add as many search conditions as you want, and then you can save those and then use them for later use. So these are just some examples of just canned filters that you would get out of the box. But again, this is true across all the major entities. So you can, basically very easily and quickly filter on all your data, and then you can export it or report on it or, do what you need to do with it. So in addition to just general querying and filtering from the front end, we also have a reports module. Honestly, I could probably do a whole just walking through the reports in of itself, but just know that one, you will actually get a slew of just canned reports right out of the box once you start using Varasset. But in addition to that, we actually have a report wizard. So basically, and you don't have to be very, I'm not very technical myself, but I could use this report wizard to basically do cross querying or cross grouping of data across different entities, and then pick the template I want, and then save that report and then use it as needed. And then you can even do additional permissions and rules applied to that report in of itself. So like I said, it's pretty extensive, and it's very, very easy to use in a lot of ways. The last thing I'll say about reporting is that, and this is also a common thing that we come across, is a lot of our customers would have their own enterprise reporting tool. And so Varasset is very accessible in just hooking into the database and getting that data for reporting as needed. So whether you're doing it from Varasset or from a third-party tool, your data is very accessible, and there's lots you can do with it in terms of reporting. You will also get configurable dashboards. So kind of going back to what I was saying earlier about role configuration. So we understand that you're going to have different roles and permissions that would be potentially accessing the system, and so obviously the data is going to be potentially different between users. In addition to applying those security rules and setting up those roles, you will actually be able to set up different dashboards from the front end as well. So I think I only have one set up now, but just know that you can set up different dashboards and views at a per user level. A couple other things here. So, you know, in addition to user and role management, you can also create your own attributes, and I'll touch a little bit on this here soon when I talk about the actual data model. But you can actually create new attributes as needed, so that's pretty common. You know, you get through your process. You know, you've been using Varasset for a while, and as the rules and regulations that you have to adhere to in your joint use department change, and you know, you have to adapt to them, we give you the ability to, you know, create new data points and, you know, like I said earlier, change your statuses and kind of adapt to the ever-changing environment that you have to adhere to. Pick lists. So a lot of the major entities have different pick list values already in the base solution, and you can actually update those items or the values listed in those pick list items. So again, you're not confined to just the values that we give you, but you can actually add new values to those fields. You can manage different accounts, all sorts of resource entities that allow you to manage, you know, people and teams and workers. Company management, that's pretty common. You'll use that quite a bit when it comes to managing your teams and the companies. And yeah, so there's a lot more there, but that's kind of a high level, just administrative type features that you, again, would just be able to start utilizing. So I'm gonna kind of jump right into the joint use data model. But before I do that, I'm going to share my screen and kind of show you what I'm going to show you. So this is just a very just kind of basic example of how our data model is set up to support your joint use activities. So more specifically, you know, starting from the right to left here, you have your work order inspection. So if you are planning on doing something like that in Varasset, what that would look like is, you know, you would have like a specific work order that would be related to your poll data. Excuse me. Which that's what this arrow is kind of representing here, that, you know, you can log different work orders to your poll data. Now, the idea is that, and I think Dave kind of already mentioned this, that, you know, we would have some sort of integration to your, you know, to your GIS. So we would have your poll data in Varasset, you know, to you know, build the data model around. So again, the idea is that, you know, your GIS has obviously the source of your poll data, but then it would come into Varasset through an integration or a regular import or something of that nature. And once it's in there, like I said, you know, we can manage your inspections against those polls, any violations that are found or additional inspection items. And then more specifically to what you're doing here, right, is managing the attachments that your third parties have on your polls. And so in Varasset, and again, I'll show this in a second, you know, you'll have your polls, but then you'll have your child records, which would then be potentially the joint use attachments, which is what you're seeing here. Those attachments would then have a permit. So those would be directly related to the poll and the attachment. So, you know, these are the permits, these are the permits under this agreement for this company, showing that these attachments are permitted on a poll. So that obviously speaks to not only billing that would happen annually or biannually or however you do that, but it would also speak to, you know, if you find a bootleg in the field, you can validate that you will have the data to prove that, you know, these are actual bootlegs. Excuse me. And then very quickly, kind of honing in on assets. So again, we will have your polls in Varasset. Those polls would then have child attachment records, which will show how that would potentially look. And then those will all have a concept of location in addition to lat long. And then who the owner is, the different relationships to that asset. And then if you are tracking the replacement of those assets, that would be there too. So I have an example record in Varasset here. I think it's saved to this. Open up this guy. So I'm opening up a poll record in Varasset. So in Varasset, we have the asset module, which would be used to manage all of your assets. So that's polls, you know, any category of poll, and then your child assets as well. So those would be the attachments. But then within the asset module, kind of like what I said, you will have different categories to represent, you know, the data that needs to be represented in Varasset for those assets. So in this example, you know, we have asset 6931. You know, you can capture a description field, or a description if needed, an alternate asset ID, reference ID, which a lot of cases this would be potentially like your, whatever the GIS ID was, that would potentially be stored there. Sequence number, serial number, the model, GL account, you can check if there's rot. Obviously who the owner is, location, the permit, which I'll come back to that in a second, and then specific attributes to that pole. So the type, installation, manufacturer, all that stuff. Now in this example, this is a wood power pole. So obviously the attributes for a wood power pole are going to potentially be different from, like a steel pole or whatever. So in Varasset, you have the ability to define those different categories and then per the category, capture the different data points for that pole. So the idea is, again, we would have some sort of integration or on a scheduled import from your GIS to bring in your asset data. And this would all be potentially populated from your GIS, the category and, the feed of, equipment or whatever. We would have that data from GIS, and it would automatically just be there through that integration. You can also relate other assets to it, whatever that may look like. Like I said earlier, you can track different tickets. So this would potentially be violations if you are intending on doing that in Varasset. Different owners. So in some cases, if there's multiple owners on the same pole, meters, so you can set up different criteria to trigger different activities. So you can set those meters up for that pole. The map. So we do have the ability to do reverse geocoding. So if we, as part of the integration or the initial load of the data, we would get your lat long from the GIS, plot it on this map here, but then we'd also potentially be able to have like a street address as well as part of that reverse geocoding. And then file attachments, so you can upload different files. So pole loading calculations or images or whatever that can all live on this record. Now going back to the summary tab here on the asset, just a couple things to point out. So the permit, which again would potentially be created from the permitting process, would then be related. So again, it's related to your pole. And then also will be related to the attachments that are on that pole. So again, this is proof that these attachments were they went through the permitting process. They were they're legally attached to your poles. And here's the proof showing that these attachments are okay to be on your pole. Each would all then have one or many agreements set up. So the idea is that you'd use Varasset to manage your contracts, your joint use of contracts with the various customers you have, and then you'd have one or many agreements related to that master contract for that company. In this example, Crystal Clear Telecommunications, and then those permits are all linked to those agreements and master contracts, which are all linked to your assets and the attachments that are permitted on your poles. So that is key there for, again, any auditing that you might do, your billing that would occur later on, again, whether you do like annual or arrears or, biannual, whatever. It all, all that data is there and reportable, and like I said, is there for you. So
can I just say, I love this portion. Okay.
Cool. So that's, again, kind of the high level of the data model. I did want to kind of move into like the permitting process, but before I do that, are there any questions or anything at all at this time?
No, I love how everything ties together here. The permits, contract, the whole ball of wax, and the billing.
Yep. Cool. So I'm gonna back out a little bit here. So as Dave had mentioned, it seems like the best path as of now for CLECO would potentially be, utilizing engines and then setting up a integration between engines and Varasset. We do have other solutions if engines is not the case, but as of now, that's kind of the path we think we're going to go down. And I'm going to kind of show that. So first, let's see here. I'm going to show another slide here. Again, Dave already kind of showed this, but I wanted to maybe do a little bit of a deeper dive on it real quick. So again, the idea is that your third parties would use engines as their portal for attaching to your assets. Now, there's a few different things that we can do to help with that process. And one of the initial things is, your pull data. So engines actually has the ability to set up reoccurring pull imports. So the idea is that we could set something up to push your pull data from Varasset to engines. And that looks a little different from customer to customer, so we have some leeway there. But the idea is that you would be able to import your pull data into engines, and then your third parties would then be able to again continue to use engines, but actually, create an attachment request against your assets, and then push it through the workflow, and then those attachment details at the end of the process or throughout the process would then come over to Varasset. So that you would then have that attachment data in Varasset for, again, all the things that we just talked about, right? So the permits, the agreements, all the billing stuff, and then auditing, whatever. So here's more of like kind of showing similar thing, but more of like the actual process flow. So again, the idea is the engines attachers would use engines to create the request, and Dave already kind of mentioned this, but we actually already have more or less a canned integration with engines. So I'm not sure who knows this on the call or not, but we actually built engines. So we're actually very capable of implementing a integration with engines, not only efficiently, but actually pretty quickly as well. So obviously there'd be maybe some variation between one customer and the next, but it is more or less a canned integration that we would help you guys, that we would set up as part of this process or part of this implementation. The idea is that
I have one question. When they submit a ticket, can they also add attachments as far as their equipment specifications, what they're wanting to attach to the poles?
Absolutely. So
Okay.
let me maybe just kind of show this here. So just give me a moment here. So this is the engine's like test instance. Now this is just test data, so it's not like real or anything. But the idea is that they would. So this is a PA ticket in engines, and when they go to create it, they can like pick a template, and that will kick off like a process flow. And the idea is that once this ticket goes to open, they there would potentially be an integration that would, like I said, would push over general just, and I'll kind of show this what this will look like in Varasset, but this will send over engines data into Varasset along with a link back to this specific ticket. So the idea is that the third parties would come in here, they would create something like this, and they would say, okay, I'm going to attach to this poll, this CLECO poll or whatever. Again, this is just test data. So they would add this to the request, and those would become assets on this record. And then again, as this, as you open this ticket, the initial proposed request would come over to Varasset along with that asset and those attachments or the proposed attachments. And then at any point in time, you would be able to go into Varasset, and again, I'll kind of show this in a second, go into Varasset and see, where that engine's ticket is currently at. Is it open? Is it in progress? Where are we at? Once the ticket in engines has been closed, a status update would then at the very end come over to Varasset and say, okay, these attachments and permits are ready to be created in Varasset for, again, historical tracking purposes, billing, the counts, all that stuff. And it would look like this. So let me, and so to answer your question about the attachments, so in engines, they will have ability to upload records to the request. Now, those file attachments would just be in engines. However, so that wouldn't necessarily be brought over in the integration. However, from a given record in Varasset, so the corresponding permit in Varasset that is relating back to the ticket, you'll have a link back to that engines ticket where, you know, any information that isn't already here, so the ticket information, you could just very easily open up that ticket and then download that file, and you would have it for use. So
I have a question related to what you just showed us. I guess you may have just answered it, and I may just not have caught that. But with this integration to engines, and I know, again, I'm out of my depth a little bit on this, but I know why I'm asking this question. Are there going to be any reports that could be generated that would show a summary of all tickets where a certain entity is next to act? Let's say I'm talking about on transfers and things like that. Because of this integration. In other words, could we say we want to know attacher company ABC, list every place where they are next to act on an engines ticket?
yeah, so there's actually a few ways you could handle that. So, and are you guys sorry, I should know, are you guys using engines today for PA? Or you guys are just using it for pole transfers right now? Is that correct?
Just for pole transfers, yes.
Okay.
But if we go this route for permit, yeah, definitely. I could see us using it for PAs.
Okay. So yeah, there's a few ways you could skin that cat. So, so you know, you guys already have, so you guys are already using engines. So you guys probably pay like the yearly fee or whatever to get it. So you actually already have the ability to start using PA. Out of the box, you get, and you could work through this with Angie, which maybe you guys have talked to her before. But out of the box, you would get, you know, just like a default template for PA. But there's additional customizations that you can do. And I want to say there's additional like dashboard setups that you can do in addition to any reporting that you'd want to do. So you could do that reporting directly out of engines, which is where we would probably think the best place for you to get that. And I'm not sure who that was talking, but I'm not sure if they answered your question.
That was me. I'm
Justin.
I've only looked at engines. I haven't really worked in it directly, so I'll get with Novi after this and see, you know, what we know about the functionality of the existing program there for that aspect of it. You know, I think knowing that information and being able to summarize it in some reports, and I don't mean, I mean by company for all attaching companies and for us, and being able to report that of 100,000 open tickets, 50,000 are waiting on attaching companies, 50,000 are waiting on us, whatever it is, and those big numbers are not real numbers. And just being able to kind of summarize all of that info in a snapshot would be some good reporting for us to do internally, for us to be able to make decisions about where we allocate resources and different things. And all of that would tie into just the ways we're trying to, I guess, streamline and add functionality to our joint use situation.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't know this, Justin, for sure, but that seems like a really good report that might already even be there. That would maybe be a question for Angie. But
I'll follow up with Novi on that part later. Okay. I just wasn't sure if it being tied to Varasset was going to be able to help us, you know, in that, but it may already be there. We just need to create the dashboards.
Yep. Good question. Any other questions on that topic? I can keep going here if not. So, like Dave and I had kind of said earlier, you know, we have a couple different ways that we can, you know, solve for the permitting process here. This is a really good solution, especially for folks who are planning on using engines. But the idea is that, yeah, we would set up an integration between us, you know, CLECO and engines, and, you know, you would Obviously, so Varasset will be creating an automatically creating like a permit ID for you. You also have a description. There will be a direct relationship between the permit, the attachments, and the master contract, which all relates to or is all related to the agreement. What company it's for. Some key milestone dates. That would all get you'd be able to track all that and report on all that. And then, like I said, as part of the integration, there would be some key fields that we would bring over from engines in addition to a link back to that record. So it looked very much like this screen here. Once the workflow has been completed out on the engine side, the integration would then kick over and close out the permit. And that would do a few, from that point, you would then be able to do a few things. One, like I said, it would actually create those attachments in Varasset with that relationship to the permit, the master contract, and the assets. And then that would all then bleed into your billing and reporting and all that stuff. So, yeah, that's, more or less it. The one thing I didn't mention is that in the midst of the workflow, as they're going through the permitting process, you will be able to pass back and forth the statuses of certain of those records. So as the permit goes from in draft to open or submitted or whatever, that would then be pushed over to engines and post on the engines wall, which I think PT has the same concept of the wall. So PA has that as well, I believe. But PA has it. So the point is that as those third parties are when they log in to see their tickets, they'll be able to see that form of communication from CLECO on the wall, so they'll be able to see that there. Let's see here. I guess before I kind of move on to the next portion, which is I've talked a lot about like the relationship between the asset and the permits and the agreements and the contracts, but I kind of wanted to show that again, but actually show those records in Varasset, and then also kind of speak to how that would pertain to your billing and invoicing. But before I do that, are there any other questions on engines or the integration or anything at all?
No, I don't have any.
Okay. So I got another slide I'm going to show here. So again, I've already kind of talked about this quite a bit, but maybe this diagram will kind of help explain it. So in terms of Varasset's billing module, kind of the main piece that ties everything together is the agreement. And what I mean by that is, you have your master contract, which would be set up with your customers, which could have one or many agreements under it. And that relationship between the agreement and then the contracts, which then is related to the permits and the attachments and your polls, that is then used to generate your sales orders and account receivables. So more specifically, when you go to process your agreement, again, annually or biannually or in arrears or whenever you do it, the agreement will, since all your attachment data is there, the agreement will use your product and rates, the most effective rate, so the current rate, against the attachment counts to generate your agreement line totals. And then once that has been approved, so we've seen this look a little different from customer to customer. Sometimes they'll go process their agreement, get the agreement lines with the counts and the totals, maybe generate a report for the customer to review and say, okay, yep, I agree that this is how much I owe for this year. Then you would go and then complete your account receivable. And then, or maybe there's like an internal approval process there. Again, there's some configurability that we can help meet your process there. But once you basically say, okay, this is how much we're going to charge AT&T or whatever for this product, we would then either generate a report or have maybe some sort of integration with your financial system for the actual invoicing to occur. So from a Varasset perspective, we try and draw the line between, we we own your joint use data, which would be, you know, again, attachments, the counts of those attachments, the rates, the contracts, but the actual execution of invoicing your third parties would happen in your financial system with, you know, but we would be the one providing the fodder to your financial system to do that invoicing. So there'd be some sort of, again, integration or report or something for you to do that on. So I'm going to show this real quick in Varasset. So I'll open up an agreement, which I think I have. Good example here. So each agreement, again, you know, you'll very similar have its own unique identification number, a description, the customer. So this would be the customer that's set up for contact information. You know, if there's a reference ID, you know, what type is it? Rental? Is it you know, lease? Whatever. Payment terms, the master contract. So again, you have your master contract at the highest level with maybe one or many agreements. And then you can actually define the billing process that the billing process specific to this agreement. So more specifically, you know, this is set up an order value of 1 in years. So basically I bill this or I process this agreement once a year, and the customer has 30 days after it's been invoiced or you know, after it's been processed to you know, to pay it. And then you have a status of eligible or on hold. And then you have dates, obviously. There's some validation on the back end that makes sure that, you know, you're processing the most up-to-date agreement and that it is valid to be processed. So if the expiration date is expired, then there would be validation there saying that you can't do that. And then you can also have a renewal date. Now, the details are like the, you know, kind of the meat of the agreement will be in the lines. So each agreement line will have a product, and then that product, which contains the rate, would then be used to process or to come up with the total amount. So on the agreement, it will automatically, based on the way you have your counts, or based on how you have it set up for that customer, the agreement will know, okay, go give me all of the, you know, the number of attachments in, you know, the quantity of attachments for this customer that are using this product. So the, you know, the attachment type, and that's how they get the quantity. And then on the product, there will be the dollar, you know, the price that they will be billed at. So when you go to process the agreement, it will look at the quantity times the product's rate, or whatever the formula is that you charge your customer at. So sometimes it's feet of space or whatever, and you'll get the total amounts. And then once you process the agreement, you would create the account receivable. See if I got one here I can open up. It'll process. Oops, I think the better example was this one. So it'll process the agreement to create the account receivable. You know, you got your total amount here, which is not showing. For some reason, not picking up the total amount. But basically, you'd get the total amount, and then you would again either run a report. Yeah, here we go. The total amount. You would run a report to, you know, again, feed your financial system to do the invoicing, or there would be an integration set up, and then we would just get back the status of, you know, once that invoice has been paid. So that's kind of a high level, but any questions on that? I could go into showing how like we actually get the counts. We have like different count queries set up to, you know, generate those dollar amounts per the quantity and the rate. But that, again, that would just kind of come as part of the implementation. But I don't know. Any other questions
I love
on
this
that?
too.
Okay.
This is a nice thing to have.
Right. Yeah. So how are you guys? I know, Novi, you and I talked. I think I did a demo to you like last year or something.
Yeah.
I forget, how are you guys doing your invoicing now? Like, how do you get your counts?
Oh my God. They're kept in just a spreadsheet, and I have to just do it all manually.
Right.
From permits that are given to me. And I sit down with an ad machine, I add them up, and I put them in the spreadsheet with the rest of it and change the formula each time.
Right.
I mean, a lot more difficult and a lot less secure.
Right. Right. And what do you guys, and sorry, Dave might have mentioned this, I might have missed it. What are you guys using for your invoicing? Like, do you guys have a financial system today?
We have SAP, but I send over my spreadsheet and my invoices. Actually, mine's not in SAP. They print out my invoices from my spreadsheet that I made up, and then they book the numbers based off of what I give them.
Right.
Yeah,
And
they
those get shot
probably
out.
would prefer not to do that. But yeah, it does have to be kept in mind that our ERP system is SAP. SAP is the ruler of all. So, for example, on the work orders are being generated in SAP, and work order information, internal work order information would have to come from SAP into Varasset. And depending on how much self-service we can do with our third-party contractors, then Varasset may feed some information to SAP. But once it gets into SAP, SAP is the ruler of all. It doesn't care what Veraset's primary keys are from the standpoint of work orders. It's the SAP work order at that point going forward. So that's just some, and I know since you've worked with other companies that use SAP, you know that, but that is something that we're going to have to consider during the implementation. That's it. That's all I have to say.
It's a good. That's a good call out for sure. And that and like you said, we've seen that before, and that makes sense, right? It's, you want that all managed on the SAP side. So we would just, provide any data that might be needed, and then it would just, SAP would carry it from there. Okay. Let's see here. Any other questions on like the billing or porting or anything?
No.
Yeah.
I think the way you collect the information and the way we can set up billing and all of that, and tracking the permitting, getting that going, that y'all know I'm in love with the product, so I can't say any more than that.
Okay. All right. Well, Dave, I didn't have a whole lot more to share. There are some other things, but I think it's basically
I think we've covered what we need to for today, but let me go ahead. I will take back and share just a couple of slides about cost and pricing and some things like that. Thank you, Austin. I appreciate that. Let me get this set up here. Takes a minute to load again. I guess I'll just zip through quick and get to. Okay. So let's talk really quickly about security. We know this is increasingly critical to everybody, and we understand that. This is designed to be implemented on your servers in full compliance with your IT policies. It's controlled and administered by your folks. It's got SAML role-based access control and application usage monitoring. And then Varasset corporately, we're SOC 2 Type 2 certified. There's another certification coming in process here shortly. Oh, and the SOC 2 Type 2 is an ongoing thing. We initially got the certification, and then we're recertified each year with testing and some things. So there's regular vulnerability and penetration testing, source code controls. We're very secure with our personnel, how they come and how they go and how they operate while they're here. And we've been a very trusted utility vendor since 1998. In terms of cost, I can we have revisited the ROM numbers a little bit, and after today we will finish that up and try to get just some rough order of magnitude numbers to you in the next few days. Suffice it to say that ROM is good for planning. We usually give, well, you will get the enterprise license, meaning it has multiple instances, and you have unlimited users, and that even extends to your contractors. So each time you do a project, you don't have to buy more seats to use it. We want people to use this. And so when we do the cost and the ROM production, it'll be a software license, which will be Varasset for joint use. And then we're going to give you a range of project labor, low to high, what we expect our best guess to be. Again, it's not a full estimate. It's not a statement of work, but it's a rough order of magnitude number that we make as accurate as we can at this time. If after you see those numbers, you want to go further and talk with our team a little further about crossing some T's and dotting some I's, we'd be happy to set that up too. The post-go live costs are just an industry standard annual maintenance fee, which is 20% of the license number, and that brings you the new versions and upgrades and patches. We do have extended support offered, which is in addition to those the first bullet point there. And I will tell you that some people's IT department just own Varasset and they run with it, and they have very minimal contact with us unless they just have a question they just can't answer. We have people on the other end of the spectrum for whom we're almost the outsource IT department for all things Varasset. And so you can do anything you want, one end or the other or in the middle. We can just work that out over time. Some of the key differentiators that I think are important, we believe, and I no one's disproven me yet, but that we have more extensive joint use experience than any other joint use vendor out there. Our implementation team has got extensive utility expertise and proven successes, and you're aware of some of those. We're based in the US and we develop, implement, and support the software, and we're fully accountable for that. The software is configurable and extensible and adaptable even after go live. And part of what I think we will suggest with that in mind is that we're going to suggest the basic thing to get you up and running for Varasset 6 for joint use. And you can add things later as time goes on. And that's part of when Novi says, I'd love what Georgia Power has. They've been with us like 15 years or something like that. And they've even added some of the pieces that they wanted. So, but the point is you can grow with this as your needs do. We've got great relationships with the field contractors because we don't compete with them, and we're a very secure system, which I think I've touched on enough. So I think we can wrap up for today unless you have any questions.
Yeah, Dave.
I have no questions. That's going to be for Justin and Cindy here, who aren't as familiar.
Well, I guess my questions are, I'll say this, as I think I told y'all last time, from my limited exposure level compared to Novi's, I think everything y'all are presenting looks pretty good. But again, I guess this is the Varasset 6 presentation, and that's going to be the pricing included in what you're planning to give us, right?
That is correct.
Okay. The other option was what was it called?
Yeah, it's joint use 365, and that was, just so you understand, it was really designed for smaller organizations, like the people that might own 20,000 to 200,000 poles. We did do a little research to see if it would fit for you, and we just don't. We think you're too big for it, to be completely frank with you at this point. So we'll try to constrain the costs on Varasset 6 for your initial implementation. If we need to step some things in over time, we can do that, but this allows you some more flexibility than that system has at this point.
Yeah, and I guess for me, so it'll be our job to sell this like it was a couple of years ago, but then obviously COVID and all that kind of put us on hold.
Yeah,
so we're trying to get this ball rolling again. Cindy's been very helpful in that.
I can hear that and see that.
Yeah, so we're trying to keep that momentum. But I am going to be honest, I'm going to have to answer those questions. What's the difference between the two? What's the price difference? So, because they're they're going to ask those questions, and I'm going to have an answer for. It's not just going to be, well, it's more, it can grow with us. We can add more functionality to us. It's more suited for our poll. It can't be generalized answers. It's going to have to be, well, it has these features that the other one doesn't. It costs this much more, but it has these features and has the ability to add these features. In other words,
Okay. Yep, I hear you.
Put it on 2 columns, and then also with the cost comparison, I need to know, what is the difference going to be in those costs if we were to not choose 6 and maybe go with the other one, even though you're telling us it might not be the best fit. I have to be able to answer those questions. They're going to ask me. There's going to ask me some pretty specific questions along those lines.
Okay, fair enough.
Well,
we'll address those.
Justin, I think I can already help you with that. With JU 365, it is what it is. You get what you get, and that's it.
And I've already told Troy that, but he's going to want to know what is that and what is Varasset 6. He's not going to take just. Right. It's not scalable. It's not modular. It's not growable. Well, he's going to understand that, but he's going to want to understand based on what we need to help us get. We know we talked about what we're doing today, and obviously nobody thinks what we're doing today is the way to do it. Not 2022. So everybody can easily understand why we need to do something, right?
Yeah.
Where we're gonna hit the questions that we have to be ready to answer, Cindy, is the why do we need to do so much, or what makes this worth it to go this far?
Okay.
That's the question we have to be able to answer. They will ask us.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I think it's possible that JU 365 could help us now, but when it reaches the point that we need more, we're basically going to have to scrap JU 365 and go to Varasset 6. So then you have the question of.
Yeah, the answer I would expect from them would be something along the lines of, well, unless you know something I don't, we don't expect to need more, something like that. I mean, that's, and I'm playing devil's advocate right here. I'm not, believe me, I'm
understandable. That's perfect.
But I'm just trying to let these guys know that when they provide us with pricing, and when we try to, you gave us a good presentation here, and I also would like to get a copy of the recording of this presentation if possible. But when we summarize all this for the upper management to make a decision on a purchase, we just have to be ready to answer those questions.
Yeah, that's true. But to me, the focus should be on the revenue generating aspects of pole use. And with JU 365, our ability to grow the revenue is very limited. And if they're wondering about growth, then just point our fingers to the Internet for All initiative from the federal government. Oh, yeah. That's really what's pushing the growth. And it's going to be pushing the growth for years to come. So
I agree, and I'm on board. I just don't expect that.
I know you are.
It's going to stop them from asking there. So I'll just need to be prepared.
So.
And I hear that as well. I understand.
So, well, I'm willing. I'm gonna. If you want me there, to be there with you, Justin, while you're sitting in front of this firing squad, I will be there.
I absolutely do. I think what you've done for us has really helped to kind of package the whole situation and put a really good face to why we want to do this. And so I do look forward, and I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful really that we're going to be able to get some movement on this, soon. Once we have some numbers from these guys and something to go sit down in front of Troy and maybe Andre with and make our case,
Well, I'll try to have you some numbers with, excuse me, had some allergies and have a little residual cough. Within a few days, within a week's time, I'll have you some updated ROM numbers.
I appreciate that. Would you be able to get us a copy of this recording? That way, if they want to go a little more in depth on the functionality, we can kind of show them this.
I think so, yes. I'll double check, but yeah, I expect we'll be able to.
Okay.
And did you ask for the slide deck too, Justin?
Yeah, the
'Cause
slide
I think-
deck would be good too. But the
Okay.
recording will also have the answers and conversation in it, so we can actually
Right.
show, the answers to some of the questions, etc.
Yep, the slide deck I can do quickly. We'll see about the recording, but I don't foresee a reason we couldn't send that to you.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
Well, thank you, everybody. I appreciate your time, and within a week, we'll get you some updated numbers and we'll go from there.
Okie dokie.
If you
I
need
would
anything else,
appreciate
reach out, let me know. And again, my offer is sincere. If you need some help with the business case, we've got some team people who can help with that. So have a
Very
good one,
awesome.
everybody. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Have a good one. Yep. Bye-bye.
Thank you.